Today we are taking another step in our fight against the evil. We are shutting down two major elements of the terrorist international financial network, both at home and abroad. Ours is not a war just of soldiers and aircraft. It is a war fought with diplomacy, by the investigations of law enforcement, by gathering intelligence, and by cutting off the terrorist money. If you support them or sponsor them, you will not do business with the United States of America. Acting on solid and credible evidence, the Treasury Department of the United States today blocked the U.S. assets of 62 individuals and organizations connected with two terror-supporting financial networks, the Taqwa and the Al-Baharaka. Their offices have been shut down in 4 U.S. states, and our G8 partners and other friends, including the United Arab Emirates, have joined us in blocking assets and coordinating enforcement action.
In November of 2001, Swiss investigators will search the home of Youssef Nada, the leader of Al Taqwa Bank, a Swiss bank that had just been shut down by the United States and the United Nations for alleged ties to Al Qaeda, Hamas, and other radical militant groups. Nada and other Al Taqwa directors are prominent members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Newsweek will say the Brotherhood, founded in Egypt in 1928 as a religious and quasi-political counterweight to the corrupt and increasingly decadent royalist and colonial governments dominating the Islamic world, always had two faces. One, a peaceful public, proselytizing and social welfare-oriented wing, and the other, a clandestine paramilitary wing. Intelligence and law enforcement officials say that while some branches and elements of the Brotherhood, such as the offshoots now operating in Egypt and Syria, have pledged to work for their goal of a worldwide Islamic caliphate using peaceful means and electoral politics. The Brotherhood has also spun off many, if not most, of the more violent local and international groups devoted to the cause of Islamic holy war. Such offshoots will include Al Qaeda and Hamas. Swiss investigators discover a 14-page document from December of 1982 entitled The Project. Nada claims not to know who wrote the document or how he came to have it, and he says he disagrees with most of the contents. The document details a strategic plan whose ultimate goal is the establishment of the reign of God over the entire world. The document begins, "This report presents a global vision of an international strategy of Islamic policy. It recommends to the study of the centers of power locally and worldwide, and the possibilities of placing them under influence. To contact and support new holy war movements anywhere in the world, and to support holy war in Palestine and nurture the sentiment of rancor with regards to Jews." Swiss investigators who analyzed the document will later write that the strategy aims to achieve a growing influence over the Muslim world. It is pointed out that the Brotherhood doesn't have to act in the name of the Brotherhood, but it can infiltrate existing entities. They can thus avoid being located and neutralized. The document also advocates creating a network of religious, educational, and charitable institutions in Europe and the United States to increase influence there. A short while later, George W. Bush, an oil businessman, had been failing badly in the year of 1987. 3 times, friends and investors had bailed him out to keep his businesses from going bankrupt. One man in particular, James Bath, had come to his aid. However, by January, his father becomes president. Some Saudis buy a portion of the small company, Harkin, which has never performed work outside of Texas. Later in the year, Harkin wins a contract in the Persian Gulf and starts doing well financially. These transactions seem so suspicious that the Wall Street Journal in 1991 states it raises the question of an effort to cozy up to a presidential son. Two major investors in Bush's company during this time, through James R. Bath, are Salim bin Laden and Khalid bin Mahfouz. Salim bin Laden is Osama bin Laden's oldest brother. Meanwhile, Khalid bin Mahfouz is a Saudi banker with a 20% stake in BCCI Bank. The bank will be shut down a few years later, and bin Mahfouz will later pay a $225 million fine while admitting no wrongdoing. BCCI Bank also had accounts from the CIA, George H.W. Bush under a pseudonym, Manuel Ortega, and members of the Medellin cartel, where billions of dollars was used in money laundering programs and also to finance illegal black operations. Leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood found the Al Taqwa Bank. This bank would later be accused of being the largest financial supporter of Al Qaeda and the Islamic group in Algeria, the GIA. For instance, the Treasury Department will later claim that $60 million in funding for Hamas will pass through Al Taqwa in 1997. The bank is mostly based on both sides of the border between Switzerland and Italy, but important branches are established in Liechtenstein and the Bahamas as offshore tax havens. Newsweek will explain that Al Taqwa, which means fear of God, was launched by members of the Muslim Brotherhood, a secret society. The Brotherhood wanted to create a financial institution in which devout Muslims could invest their money. It would operate under strict Islamic law, which prohibited banks from charging interest. But investigators believe the convoluted structure of Al Taqwa made it easy to use as a money laundering mechanism. The central operation consisted of 4 men working at computers in a small apartment in Lugano, Switzerland. Lugano, which sits near the Italian border, is a kind of alpine Tijuana, well known as a haven for tax evaders and money launderers. Reportedly, in 1995, Italian investigators will tell a Swiss prosecutor that Al Taqwa and related entities comprise the most important financial structure of the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic terrorist organizations. 6 members of the bin Laden family are among the original contributors to the Bahamas branch. A number of the bank's leaders have ties to Nazism or fascism. For instance, when board chairman Youssef Nada was a young man, he allegedly worked with both the armed branch of the Muslim Brotherhood and Nazi Germany military intelligence. Ahmed Huber, a Swiss convert to Islam, previously known as Albert Huber, is both a director of the bank and an open neo-Nazi. He proudly displays portraits of Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden next to each other in his house. According to a reporter who will interview him in 1995, Huber's office is adorned with portraits of Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, and Islamic militants such as Osama bin Laden. Huber will spend decades attempting to forge links between the neo-Nazi movement and the radical Muslim movement, speaking to and networking with both groups. He will be quoted around 2001 saying that the Al Qaeda leaders he met in January of that year are very discreet, well-educated, and very intelligent people. The founder of Al Taqwa appears to be Francois Jeannot, who would die in 1996. Jeannot is a Swiss lawyer who funded the Nazis and served as a Nazi agent during World War II. After the war, he funded the secret Odessa organization, which enabled many notorious Nazi fugitives to escape to safe havens in South America and elsewhere. Authorities believe that Jeannot uses Al Taqwa to fund international militants like Carlos the Jackal and Osama bin Laden. He also paid for the legal expenses of ex-Nazis such as Klaus Barbie and Adolf Eichmann. Many Muslim radicals and neo-Nazis share a strong hatred for Jews and the United States. The Al Taqwa will be shut down shortly after 9/11 for its support of Al Qaeda and other groups officially designated as terrorist organizations. Meanwhile, in January of 1993, Mohammad Salah, a Hamas operative living in the United States, is arrested in the West Bank by the Israeli government on suspicion of transferring money to Hamas for guns and ammunition. News reports in February indicate that he is from Chicago and has been found with more than $100,000 and plans from Hamas leaders in the United States. Apparently, this causes Chicago FBI agent Robert Wright to begin investigating his fundraising activities. Salah reportedly quickly confesses to directing certain Hamas military operations, organizing military cells, and to handling more than $1 million to purchase weapons. He names 23 organizations in the United States that he says are helping to fund Hamas. He will later claim he was tortured into confessing. One of Salah's associates is also arrested and reveals the existence of Hamas training camps in the United States. Salah secretly will be tried by the Israeli government in 1994, in which he pled guilty of the charges. Later in the year, he would be sentenced to 5 years in prison and released in 1997. At around that same time, another Israeli informant, this time someone who's involved with the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Ahmed Huber. Ahmed Huber was arrested by Israeli authorities for operating money laundering and money producing fake money scheme operating out of a graveyard. He was sentenced to prison, and while there, accosted by the Israeli intelligence arm, the Mossad, asking for a reduction in sentence and to be completely let out of prison. He agreed to work as a informant and involving himself with Islamic militant groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Later that year, a judge would meet up with Ramzi Youssef and travel to Afghanistan, where both would become involved with the Wild Jihad training camp, making bombs. In 1993, it was a judge who Ramzi Youssef was calling while a judge was detained by immigration officials for trying to enter the United States on a false passport about how to make the bomb used in the World Trade Center of 1993. Robert Wright begins to uncover a wide network of suspected Hamas and Al Qaeda financiers inside the United States. The agent apparently gets a key head start from the confession of Mohammad Salah in Israel early of 1993. The FBI operation is codenamed Vulgar Betrayal. However, Wright will later claim that by 1994, he encounters resistance to his investigations from the FBI's International Terrorism Unit. Wright will claim that there existed a concerted effort on the part of agents conducting counterterrorism intelligence investigations to insulate the subjects of their investigations from criminal investigation and prosecution. In 2002, Wright will claim that the agents were doing this because they were lazy, and he will sue these unnamed agents. But in 2003, he will suggest that in addition to such incompetence, his investigations into Al Qaeda and Hamas operatives living in the US were deliberately blocked so that Hamas and Al Qaeda would be able to foment enough violence, especially here in the United States and in Israel, to derail the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. He will allege that some people in the FBI had a political agenda regarding Israel, contrary to President Clinton's. Meanwhile, Israel had numerous spy rings inside the United States at this time, wiretapping federal and state agencies from the judicial and congressional level. The FBI refuses to prosecute Saudi links to suspected Islamic fundamentalist charities, and the CIA were monitoring a Saudi who was directly linked to those charities, Osama bin Laden, who was living in the Sudan, who was beginning to form an organization based out of Afghanistan's Arab training camp, the Al-Masada. The organization was named Al Qaeda. An enemy was brewing, and the political neocons were waiting to capitalize on their broad agendas for the Middle East.